Time for another coffee with Kilroy, or what I like to call beverage in a book. So grab your favorite beverage and join me for a book. Well, kind of a book. Today, we're looking at Panzerschreck, issue 18. This is winter 2020 to 21. And Panzerschreck is published by Minden Games. And they typically take some of their other games that they publish, put them into Panzerschreck, but also publish it somewhat like a wargame magazine. I mean, it's very similar to a wargame magazine in that there are reviews in here, there are articles in here. It's unlike the decision games type magazine that have articles about history and the like. This is typically game related. They're talking about other games, other war games. There's interviews with designers. So it's very somewhat more game centric, but they also include some of their own games in these issues as well. So in that respect, it kind of feels like one of the war game magazines where you have articles and then you also have a game in here. This one has 3 games, and they're solitaire games. They are Charge of the Light Brigade, Gunfight at OK Corral, and Fall of Rom, 2nd edition. And again, these are all Minden Games, published by Minden Games, and you come in this little kind of a bound book here. On the back here, we talk about interview anthology special. You have Richard Berg, Don Greenwood, John Hill, and Dana Lombardy. So some big name designers there. If you're not familiar with these, then I don't know what to tell you, but pick this up and read the interview and you'll get familiar with them. It says here, Panzerschreck focuses on the fun aspects of the wargaming hobby, delivering content sure to warm the hearts of historical board game veterans. In this special edition, a set of interviews conducted with top wargaming personalities over the years are presented, collected here in a single issue for the first time. In addition, several reviews of recent game releases, wargame articles, and 3 wargames are included. So if you can see that there. And let's take a look inside this book here, or Panzerschreck, this magazine, book, whatever you want to call it here. Do a little bit of a quick page through. Here's your table of contents, what is in this book, and as you see here, it's over 94 pages of all kinds of wargaming goodness there. Some opening rounds, and again, Gary Graber is the brains behind Minden Games, and I assume the owner and designer and publisher and the like. And here's an interesting thing here. I've covered a lot of war game books, right? And you check out my playlist down below if you want to find out a little bit more about war game books. And I eventually divided that up between game books, which can be all manner of war game or game books, and then there's war game books, where just books that focus on war games. And included in that is Roll for Omaha 1944, which is kind of a roll and write war game book. And so I cover that I've covered that, so you can take a look at that in the playlist. And here's a review about that. And I find the way they did this review was pretty interesting here. You roll for it, right? You're going to roll for your review, and you're going to have these modifiers, whether you like solo World War II games or your collector or completist, etc., plus and minus, and then you roll the dice and see whether you want to get this or not get it. Find that kind of an interesting thing here. Here's campaigns of Montrose. This is one of the, I believe this is a mini game from Decision Games, a part of their mini Folo series, and I have that as well. But Minden Games is not just covering Minden Games; they're covering games from other designers here. So this is really not a house organ, so to speak. Here's an interview with Richard Berg. And this was done, I think, several years ago, the late Richard Berg now. But this, I think he pulled an interview that he had done with him several years back. But it's republished here. And it's a pretty interesting interview. He goes through a lot of his past history and designs. Here's the infamous campaign for North Africa there. And so, pretty interesting interview. Goes on for several pages there. Now, here is a Minden Design game, Solo East Front. And here's an interview with Dana Lombardy here. So you can get into that and some of his background and what he's done in the hobby. Here's Sea Kings from Minden Games. Here's an interview with Don Greenwood of Avalon Hill fame. A whole several pages there. Here's Masada, a little ad for Masada, which is I've covered that. That's one of their solitaire games. Here's Charge of the Light Brigade. This is a solitaire war game that comes in this book here. So you're going to have the background for it. You're going to have the rules here. And then here's some of the game tables that you need for that game. Some of the counters. So you're going to need to copy this and print this out. Maybe one thing I do sometimes is I'll copy it onto like a sticker sheet, and then you can cut up that, like one of those label type sheets, and then you can cut these out, and you put that on like some cardboard or some thicker stock, and then cut those out. Here's the board for it. Again, not very big there, and this is left intentionally blank because you can, make a copy or even cut this out. I would never deface a book, but here is the actual board for that game. And here is your hit roster, some of the historical leaders of that game, and you'll keep track of their hits on this or their casualties. Here's notations, KIA, wounded or horse on that. Here's the rest of the rules, and then you have optional scenarios here. And then you get some designer notes on this as well. So there you have that. Here's the infamous or the famous Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson, which kind of made that charge or that ill-fated charge infamous. There's some more game reviews here. Tears of Too Many Mothers. Talks a little bit about that. Custard Last Stand. I have that. That's from Worthington. So you get a full kind of game review here. Here's Robin Hood. Here's Rampage. That's from World at War magazine. So you have a kind of a magazine book or game book interview talking about reviewing another magazine, war game magazine. Talking about that. Here's Santa Cruz, 1797. I think Stuka Joe has done some stuff on that, or talks about that one, I think. Here's the South, to the South, the Honshu War. And you get an example of counters here as well. Pretty interesting there. Less Than 60 Miles. That's from Thin Red Line Games. And then we're talking a little bit, here's a little ad for some of their solitaire World War II games. NATO Nukes and New Invasions here, the article. Here's another game, Gunfight at OK Corral. So this is basically a solitaire war game where you're recreating the gunfight at OK Corral. So you're going to have a description of his components, which are the famous actors in that, or the gunfighters in that dispute. It shows your game map, which is really basically who you can shoot. The lineup of the Clanton gang, and then the White Earps and their forces, and where they line up and who they can shoot at. So there's your setup. Here's your rules, your firing order phase, your fire phase. I mean, this is basically, a gunfight, right? So it's not a lot to it other than firing. Here's your your hit location, arm, hand, leg, foot, so the parts of the body and the severity of that. And you use a deck of cards to help you in this game as well. So that, shows the suit, and then the order of the card tells you kind of where it's at. So this is with the pistol, this is with the shotgun. Here's your morale, what happens once you get shot, and determining victory. And then you have some optional rules here, designer notes, and then here are the actual counters that you'll have to, again, you'll have to copy this and then print this out, or copy this maybe on a sticker sheet maybe and put it on some stock, so if you want to cut out these counters. But you have like their different, like the morale and their gun speed and their experience and aim, and all kinds of different things are denoted on here. So like Johnny Ringo is the fastest, I think, at 18. Then comes Doc Holliday at 17, then Wyatt Earp at 16. So the gun speed's going to, draw speed or whatever is going to come into play. Then their aim or accuracy, and then their experience comes into play as well. And then you got some markers on here. And then here's kind of how the layout, the shooting, and who can shoot who. Then there's some optional rules here. You can do an optional map where they might be able to shoot different people based on that. And here's your hit roster for each of those individuals that are in this gunfight. Here's an interview with John Hill, and this was done by Gary Graber. So John Hill of Squad Leader fame there, among other games. So a nice interview here. Then you get the fall of Rom here, or Rome, how I pronounce it, but this was the key player in 1930s Germany. He was kind of originally an ally of Hitler, and who Hitler wanted to use to get, because he controlled the military, or a portion of the military, a very active portion of the military, and eventually Hitler saw him as a potential rival, and he was executed as part of the Night of the Long Knives. So here's the game counters for that. This is talking about the introduction of that. And then some more of the rules. And then here's the Rome location table, the Hindenburg health table. So this is right as Hindenburg was failing. The power was kind of separated between the president and the chancellor, and Hindenburg was president. He was failing, and Hitler wanted to consolidate power since he was the chancellor. And so that kind of factors into where, and the big issue was, where was the military going to land in this? And as I said, Rome had controlled a portion of that military, a very active portion, and they wanted to secure that. And then, but then they thought he might be getting too powerful, and so they offed him, along with several other political rivals at that time. Here's your random events table. Here's your action effects table. So this is mostly a political game, as opposed to a straight up war game, because it's all about the political situation at that time and how they were trying to deal with it. And here's your game board, so to speak, where Rome's location, I'm going to keep on butchering that, Hindenburg's health, and then the different units between the economy, the army, the SS and SA. SA is the portion which I think Rome controlled, and then the SS, and the different factions that you're, from a political standpoint, of who you're getting influence in. Here's scenarios, of course, here, and then designer notes, and then an extended example to illustrate play. So you get an example of play here even. So there you have it. Here's a synopsis of the games published in Panzerschreck. And again, a lot of times these games are published in Panzerschreck, but they also might be published individually or in other, formats that Minden Games does. And there's several of them here, as you can see over time. Then you get another advertisement here for other games that are available. And there you have it. So that is what you get in Panzerschreck issue 18, winter 2020 and 2021. I kind of like these little books here. These are interesting. This is, kind of a do-it-yourself, right? You're not getting all the components just ready to pull out here and play like you would in a strategy and tactics or World at War, or one of those, or even Against the Odds. I mean, you're having to kind of copy and make these. Although they do offer up sometime component sets for these. I'm spoiler alert, I might cover that next. But you can't get component sets. But again, they're not going to be punched counter sheets or anything like that. It's going to be just harder. It's going to be separate and on a thicker stock, and then you have to cut it up yourself or cut it out yourself and deal with it. But so there's still a little bit of do it yourself, no matter how you slice it with these. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. Love to know your thoughts on these. Do you find these interesting at all? If you're not a solo player, then you probably don't find this too interesting. But they do reviews for other games in here, so these are kind of interesting in that regard. The interviews, I think, are kind of a collector's piece here. Some of those are some very noteworthy designers and people in the wargaming community. So it'd be, the interviews themselves are probably worth a look and worth a read. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts and comments. Thank you so much for stopping by with me today. Enjoy your beverage of choice. I hope you enjoyed this book. Love to hear your thoughts about it. And again, have a great one, whatever time it is, whatever day it is when you're watching this. Thanks for stopping by, and have a great one. Take care. Thanks for watching.